The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another week and another edition of Double Tap TV. We've got a great show lined up for you today, and we're going to be diving right in. But before we do that, let me invite you to join the show by emailing us feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter, it's @DoubleTapCanada with that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. And now we're on Instagram. Just check us out @DoubleTap.online. We tried to make them all the same, but unfortunately we'd have to change our name in order to make it all succinct. So hopefully you'll follow along. I am Mark Aflalo, joined each and every week by Stephen Scott. Stephen, a couple weeks back, we did a show about this show, how we produce Double Tap TV, and the response was absolutely amazing. We got lots of emails, lots of tweets. People wanted to obviously know about the equipment and everything we're doing here. So one of the things we mentioned in that show was about podcasting and audio and equipment. Specifically, when we mentioned podcasting, we got emails saying, well, what if I want to get into podcasting? So this week, we're talking all about podcasting. Now, if you were starting in podcasting today, what are some of the things that you would look out for, Stephen?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I've got the benefit of hindsight here, right? So I can say, well, I've had a chance to have a go through this already. So buying the right equipment, knowing what your subject matter is, these are the key things. And obviously this is a tech show, so we're going to dive into the tech a lot on this program. And I think we'll get into some of the real interesting hardware a bit later. But yes, equipment is important. I know I've probably said it on this show many times. I've said it on my radio shows. Being able to use the technology you have to make podcasts is important. It's the best way to get started. Your content is key, though, right? I mean, if you don't know what you're going to talk about and you just decide you're going to tell the world about how great jam is, and we all love a bit of jam, but, is it really a podcast topic? Are people going to tune in week after week to hear about it? Now I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking, hey, a jam podcast might work. What's your favourite? Strawberry? Raspberry? The options are endless. Now you've got me thinking. Well, if I was going to take that concept, I'd want to think about jam, and I'd want to think about how I'm going to spread it over a few episodes. See what I did there, Mark? Do you like that? That's just an idea, quite literally off the top of my head. Who would believe it? But that's the key, right? It's about coming up with an idea, thinking about how, what its longevity is, and then thinking about what you're going to do on the podcast week to week. Maybe special guests come on. Okay, how are you going to do that? How are you going to interview guests? How would you record all that? There's so much to consider, Mark.
Okay, so on my end, of course, other than content, I would focus on quality audio. And I really feel that that's one of those things that are really overlooked. And I have to tell you a quick story, because a couple of weeks ago, someone reached out on LinkedIn and they said they wanted to pitch a podcast to me so that they could get it to a client of mine. So I listened to it, and while the content was actually quite good and unique, and I felt that there was maybe a niche market there, I could not get over the fact that the host sounded like they were in a giant open kitchen. So, of course, I asked the question. I said, what kind of equipment is he using? And I find out they're using, a Blue Yeti mic, which is a decent microphone, cost-effective mic, and actually sounds pretty good. But the room in which they were recording was definitely a giant space that had a lot of echo. And that's super important, Stephen, because sometimes, even more so than having a great microphone, is having a room that doesn't have too much echo, because that can make something go from unlistenable to great in an absolute heartbeat. And I can tell you, Stephen, if I listen to something that to me sounds bad from the start, the odds that I'll come back and give you a second chance are pretty slim.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's it. If you're listening to something and the sound is terrible, and look, blind people live in audio, right? We listen for good audio quality. If it's not good, yeah, we're going to think twice. So it's so important to get that right. But look, speaking of which, actually, let's hear from someone who's done this. Someone who's actually gone out, someone who's blind, set up their own podcast. And let's hear from him now. His name is Jonathan Mosen. He's from New Zealand. In fact, you know what? I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi Double Tappers, kia ora koutou katoa from New Zealand. It's Jonathan Mosen from the Mosen at Large podcast. I've been podcasting since podcasting started in 2004, and I would offer this one piece of advice. Apps for Windows like SoundForge, Studio Recorder, Goldwave, they're very popular in our community, but I don't think they're the right tool for podcasting, particularly as you grow in confidence as a podcaster. I would recommend that you start from the get-go with a multi-track podcast recorder. My favorite in this category is Reaper. It's cheap. There's a lot of support out there from blind people who are also using Reaper. But whatever multi-track option you go with, it's a lot more flexible than just your standard single-track stereo recorder. If you go back far enough to the days of the tape recorder, you'll remember that when you record over the top of something you've already done, you erase what you recorded previously. And all of these single-track recorders are like that. With a multi-track recorder, you can record multiple people or things on different tracks and play with the way it all sounds afterwards. Why is that important? Well, let's say that you're interviewing a guest remotely, something that many podcasters have done during the pandemic. The mic that you use and the mics that your guests use are likely to be different. The way that your guests sound will be different from the way that you sound. With a multi-track editor, you can apply different effects like equalization and compression to you and each of your guests. Also, every so often I interview a guest who takes the opportunity to have a good old cough and a splutter whenever you ask them the question. If you've recorded you and your guest or guests on a one-track system, you can't edit them out without editing yourself. But with a multi-track recorder, it's just super easy to mute your guests while they have their good old cough and you continue to ask your question. You can do that when the recording is over.
I mean, that's great advice there, Mark, and things that really people should be paying attention to.
You know, Stephen, we're going to dive into a lot this week, but we're going to talk about equipment. But before we do that, I wanted to bring on an expert in this field. We're going to do that after we take a break. This is Double Tap TV again. If you want to get involved, as I know you do, it's feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter, it is @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. And now on Instagram, @DoubleTap.online. We'll be back in just a moment.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech. This is Double Tap TV.
We're talking all things podcasting this week on Double Tap TV. Thank you so much for joining us. Our email address is feedback@ami.ca and follow us on Twitter @DoubleTapCanada. Use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. I am Mark Aflalo with Stephen Scott by my side. Now, Stephen, all good stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So where do you want to start when we talk about getting into podcasting?
The beginning?
They learn so quickly, don't they? But seriously, guys, there's a lot that goes into starting a podcast, and that leads us very nicely into our guest on this week's show. I have known this next guest for almost 25 years. Now, after starting his career in broadcasting in 2016, he founded his own very first podcast, and he's been growing radio audiences and podcast audiences ever since as the founder of the Sound Off Media Company. He's also the producer and host of his own podcast, as I mentioned, Sound Off Podcast, and he helps so many new podcasts get off the ground. Matt Kundle, thank you for joining us this week on Double Tap TV. Matt, you worked in broadcasting for a number of years. Why did you make the switch to podcasting?
Restructuring was the official word from my employer at the time. And that was in 2014. And I did spend about 2 years sort of, kicking stones in the parking lot and wondering, okay, what was going to be next? And we did our hand at radio consulting and we did some contract jobs. And then all of a sudden, podcasts began to spring up. And a friend of mine said to me, I'm going to a podcast conference. And I said, I want to come too. And the next thing you knew, we were in Chicago at Podcast Movement in 2016. And I took a look around and there's a lot of people with microphones. And they were really the same enthusiastic people that I had met in radio who wanted to do the all-night show. And they wanted their voices heard and they wanted to put it out there. And I looked at this giant room of people just talking to microphones. And I thought, I'm not sure exactly where the goal is, but it feels like pond hockey. And I can stick handle my way around all this. And when I find the net, I'll find a way to score then. And, being from Canada in 2016, there wasn't a lot of podcast activity on the business side. So I thought this is going to be a good place to be.
Matt, when did you decide to start your own podcast?
It was in 2016. I wanted to show up at the conference having, started a podcast. So at least I could have a little bit of experience doing it. In 2014, when I fell out of radio, the thing that I found very, very confusing is all this audio is being created yet where is it going and what is it doing? It wasn't necessarily being created for radio. So whether that was in voiceover, and I had been doing voiceover for many, many years, but also all this audio was being created for podcasting. I thought, well, it's got to go somewhere. So I'll just keep creating audio and finding other channels to distribute it.
Matt, so let's fast forward 5 years, okay? It's now 5 years down the road. Lots of people now want to start their own podcast, but some feel that the space is so diluted. Is it a good idea to even start one now?
Well, it's funny because nobody ever says that about books. I mean, there's so many books out there, but everyone's just dying to go out there and write a book. I mean, nobody stops and says, well, there's so many books. I don't think I'll write my book. I think I'll just keep it to myself. And podcasting's the same way. I mean, yes, there are close to 2 million podcasts now out there, but you're going to have to market it. And like any radio station or like any book or like anything that you do in a business, you're going to have to market it and get the word out there.
Is it possible for someone with a little budget, but perhaps a decent audio setup and, a decent grasp of how to make a good podcast to successfully market it?
Absolutely. And so most of this stuff doesn't have to cost a lot of money. If you do research, I mean, I think the ATR 2100X is a great place to start for a microphone. It's a dynamic mic. It's around $100 some odd, and you'll get a choice of an XLR cable and a USB cable. And I'm sorry if I'm speaking over people's heads, but those are the two connectors that people I think would recognize the most, because I think people do want some form of plug and play. But then you got to ask yourself, oh, well, what else do I want to do? Maybe I want to be interviewing people online. Maybe I want to be interviewing people in person. These are some of the things you want to think about when you're making your equipment decisions, when you're first starting out, and you can do it on a budget. Now, maybe your podcast is not going to be, 10,000 downloads right away. I think we all start with 0. In fact, I think the first episode for everybody is 9 downloads. I don't know what it is. The number 9 seems to be, I got 9 downloads. But if your podcast is getting 125 downloads after 30 days, you've actually beaten half the podcasts that are out there. Here's something else to think about. If I gave you the opportunity to talk in front of 125 people, wouldn't you take that opportunity? So don't look at it as being that you have to get thousands and thousands of downloads. You're really trying to build your own community of people. And I think the best way to do that is to do the audio, but then also release on a consistent basis so that people know when you're going to have an episode. And the next thing you know, you've got 100, 200, maybe you get to 250, 300, and it builds from there. It's really about building your community.
Matt, let's talk about access. Okay, you've got out and recorded and edited a podcast. It sounds great. Do you want the podcast to be available on every service? Is that still good practice to make it available everywhere?
Wouldn't you want to be anywhere and everywhere? It just makes sense that, people are going to want to consume a podcast the way they want to do it. And I think radio has made this big mistake where they're trying to get everybody onto one particular app to listen to, whether it's the radio.com app or the iHeart app. And they're pushing people into these places. And people don't want to be people don't want to be treated like cattle in these situations. They want to listen to it on their own ecosystem with their own phone, the way they want to do it. So be everywhere. And if that means you need to put your podcast up on YouTube and it's an extra step, or you need to put your podcast onto SoundCloud, even though we don't recommend using SoundCloud as a podcast distributor. But if it means just putting it there, do it. I think the most important thing, though, is to have a website so that no matter what, you have a place for people to go to get your stuff and to find your stuff, and where you can really build your community out of. And Google loves the fact you have your own Google loves the fact you have your own website.
So here's the number one question I bet you get asked all the time, Matt. Can we make money from our podcasts?
Don't try to make money right away. I think with any new venture and anything that you're not sure of, because people come and they say, oh, I want to start a podcast and it's going to be like this. And I go, well, we don't know that it's going to work out that way. And you don't even know your audience. Even people who have Instagram audiences of hundreds of thousands of people have no idea what their podcast audience is going to be like, because it just turns out people like looking at the pictures, right? Maybe they don't want to hear your audio capabilities. I mean, it's very possible. So frequently I'll see that with Instagrammers. They'll start off with lots of downloads, and then it goes down and they go, what's happening? And it says, people don't want to hear your voice. They just want to see your pictures. But then all of a sudden something magical happens if they keep at it. And that's the audience from the audio side starts to build, and you create this new audience. You've got to give it a year. You've got to do a lap around the track. in order to figure out what you really have. Because if you go in with this idea of, I'm going to sell these ads to this client, to these customers, you don't know that. You don't know that customer is yours. You don't know that client is yours. You don't really know. You think you know, but you don't know. And so I say don't. And often what will happen, if you're connecting enough, it's going to be the people in your community who are going to say, I'd like to partner with you, or I'd like to work with you in some capacity. I think we have something to offer one another. And it's really, solid networking. I think podcasting is really, if it's one thing that's taught me, it's about networking. And it's really a great way to do it.
Very wise words, Mr. Kundal. Very wise words. Thank you, Matt Kundal. Everyone, that is Matt Kundal, founder of the Sound Off Media Company and the host of the Sound Off podcast. If you want to check that out on the podcast platform of your choosing, you can also find Matt by looking for the Sound Off podcast or going to soundoffpodcast.com. There's still so much to get to in this conversation. When we come back, we're going to dive into some of the hardware you'll want to get started when you launch your next or maybe even your first podcast. It is Double Tap TV. Back in a moment.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV, talking all things podcasting this week. I know you want to get involved. Email us, feedback@ami.ca. And of course, follow us on Twitter @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap, and now on Instagram, which is @doubletap.online. So when you start a podcast, you want to cut through all that noise, and this really can't be done without a little bit of investment. That is, of course, if you intend on sounding good from the start. I am Mark Aflalo with Stephen Scott by my side. Now, Stephen, not everybody has a quarter century of experience in broadcasting behind them, or all that equipment that comes along with that experience, do they?
No, they don't. And that's the thing, isn't it? We've got to make sure that when you're starting out on the journey of making a podcast, that you consider the technology around you, because that's going to be key. Yes, I mentioned earlier about content, and of course the story is important, but if it doesn't sound good, then no one's going to listen to it, right? So that's why investment in technology is key. Now, for me, I am going to talk about one company, Rode, R-O-D-E. Now, they make lots of different technology, and not since the pandemic, but certainly during the pandemic, they've sold a lot of kit. That has helped a lot of people share their story. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about is my most, the furthest away product I bought, and I kind of bought it on a bit of a whim. It's called the Rodecaster Pro. Now, you've maybe heard of this. It's a mixing console, mixing desk, as I would call it. This is a bit different because this one allows you to do a couple of key things. One, it allows you to connect up to your computer directly. It allows you to connect your phone into the mixing console as well, so you're able to bring in live phone calls. You can even do Skype calls or Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams. You can use all that through the computer side. You can even connect a Bluetooth device. So, for example, let's say you were using your Amazon Echo to demonstrate something. You can actually bring that audio into your mixing console via that Bluetooth control. But like I say, you can plug in microphones as well. You can record on board, which is a really key thing for me. The ability just to hit one button and use a micro SD that you've put in the back to record your audio. And by the way, it is very reliable. That's wonderful. And there's one other key function. This is built for podcasters, right? So it has 8 buttons on it which you can assign audio to. So you've just got these quick hit instant carts like you used to have in the good old days. You would have, buttons on your desk. You just hit a button, it would play a jingle or an introduction or a sound effect or whatever it is you want. You can easily just hit that button and it will play that in, and you can load that via a separate app on your computer, which once you plug it into your computer will be available. Accessibility wise, not perfect because it is all controlled via an on-board touchscreen. However, I will say I think that, with a bit of help with maybe Be My Eyes or perhaps Iris services or just a friendly pair of eyes around the house that, happen to be working, and you can just pull in for a couple of minutes, you can set it up, and once it's set up, you can forget about all that and get on with the business of podcasting. One of the key things for me on it, though, is it has those physical sliders that mixing boards have, which I have to say is just the way I love working. I know when my microphone's up, literally, because the fader is pushed all the way up to the top, and then I know it's off because it's all the way down. And one thing on that, even when you put your microphone up, it will kill your speakers, which means you won't get all that noise you often get from, when you get your microphone plugged in and it's suddenly coming through your speakers as well. Absolute nightmare. So all that is in there. How much, I guess you're asking? It is going to cost you a few quid. $840.
Stephen, another company that I've been using for years in the broadcast space is a natural fit for podcasting, and that company is Mackie. Now, you mentioned them off the top. Mackie's been around for longer than you and I have both been in this business, building great mixers, speakers, but lately they've entered in the podcasting game with some really cool and affordable equipment. Now, when I think of Mackie, I know it's going to be rugged, I know it's going to stand the test of time, and I know it's going to sound amazing. So what kind of gear do they have now? Well, Mackie recently introduced 2 USB microphones. Each has a really cool use case. They're all part of the Element series, starting with the EM, which of course stands for Element, 89D like dynamic. Now, it is a dynamic mic, which means it looks like a traditional handheld microphone that singers would use on stage, but it features built-in USB, which means you can plug it into your computer and instantly have audio. Now, I think it's important to explain kind of what a dynamic mic is, because the next mic we're going to be talking about, the EM91C, is a condenser microphone. So the difference between a dynamic mic and a condenser mic is that a dynamic microphone is better for capturing loud, strong sounds, drums, loud vocals, particularly in a live setting, because it really focuses in on your voice. So it helps kind of eliminate all the background sound that might be there. So if you know you have a space that you're not going to be able to treat for acoustics, this is a good choice. Now, back to the price, the EM89D starts at $69.99, which means that with one microphone, if you're doing a solo podcast, you can plug in and just go. Now, the EM91C is a condenser microphone. Condenser mics are best for soft vocals, rooms that are treated, because it picks up a lot of the ambiance around there. A lot of people, when they're doing vocals to music, they want to hear a bit of that room tone. They want to get a little bit of reverb and natural reverb. This mic, again, also part of the Element series, $79.99, built to all the Mackie standards, which means it's going to be great, it's going to be rugged, it's going to stand the test of time, and it's going to make you sound amazing as well. But be wary, you want to make sure that space around you is acoustically treated. That could mean that you're recording in a closet with lots of clothing. It could mean that you spend money to get padding on your walls. Lots of ways you can do that.
Yeah, that's a lot in there, isn't it? And we didn't even get to my Wireless Go 2 from Rode that I wanted to talk about. Maybe another time.
Maybe we do a video about content creation on the video side of things.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other episode, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. I hope you learned something today, guys. If you want to get in touch with us, if you have any questions, the email address, of course, is feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter, @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. And now on Instagram, we are at doubletap.online. Thank you to Matt Kundle for joining us this week. On behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. We will catch you on our next edition of Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing, Will Attar. Production assistants, Wendy Kaufman. Content review, Zachary Aflalo. Social media, Andy Wynn. Segment producer, Sean Priest. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Production, Kara Nye. Director, Programming, Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2021, Accessible Media, Inc.